Good morning, world. Welcome to another episode of Xendependently Minded. If you are a new or returning listener, I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we get into the episode, here's a brief disclaimer. Enjoy. The views and opinions expressed by past, present, and future guests of Xendependently Minded have not been expressed by me, and they may not even be shared by me. The views and opinions that I express are, of course, satirical. If you're confused, then try this thought experiment to help you understand. If you like what I said, or say, and you agree, then you can tell yourself that it is my real opinion, and it's not satirical. If you don't agree with what I say, and you're disgusted and repulsed by it, then obviously I'm just being satirical. Obviously, these aren't my real opinions, because this is clearly a character, and nobody would actually have these opinions, would they? Anyway, enjoy the episode. How's it going, boys and girls? It's your boy, Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader, back at it with another episode of Time to Incite Some Violence and Never Experience Consequences. We have a lot to talk about today. It's been about a month since we last spoke. I haven't really even done an actual episode in over a month. Last time I spoke with you guys was the Charlie Kirk episode. So hope you guys found some solace or some comfort in that. The only thing I wanted from that was to, make some sense out of this senseless tragedy, this horror, and really get people to brace themselves for the potential incoming, permanent changes that we could see in the United States. And thank God they, the side that Charlie Kirk belonged to is reasonable. Cooler heads prevailed. They have jobs. They have families to think about, to provide for. So there wasn't an immediate, or actually really any response with violence to the horrible, horrifying killing of Charlie Kirk. So anyway, before we get into it, just going to give a brief overview of the topics I'm going to be discussing today, because as I said, it's been a month, so there's a good bit of stuff to talk about. So I'm going to be talking about the government shutdown. Going to talk about HHS employees again calling for RFK Jr.'s ouster and some developments that he's made in regards to autism. 7 AFD candidates have died within a short time in Germany, so we're going to talk about that. James Comey learning what karma is, or he's going to soon. The Israel-Hamas war ending, for now at least. And then the latest updates on the Russia-Ukraine war. Before we start with the first topic, I do want to share some interesting info on an event that's happened. So my Charlie Kirk video, the Charlie Kirk podcast, depending on which version you consumed, depending on which version you watched or listened to. So I did an actual full-fledged episode with commentary, and then I played the compilation at the end of over 4 minutes of violent rhetoric, I want to say. 4 minutes of violent rhetoric coming from Democratic leaders specifically, because, let's face it, Democrats, the Democratic side, Democratic political violence dwarfs in comparison to Republican or anybody slightly center-right of far left. This is not only factual, logical. If you just look at it if you choose your brain, you look at the current president of the United States during his campaign last year, almost died. He was a couple millimeters away from getting assassinated by a leftist. He was, so that's leftist violence. Charlie Kirk. You had even the person who went to attack the Senator Hortman in Michigan, that nightmare horror attack, that's constantly labeled as right-wing violence when that guy was just mentally insane, mentally ill, didn't ever say there was an actual motive that he had. He was so insane that he said that Tim Walz hired him to do it. Also, there was a YouGov poll that's been making the rounds that was done pretty shortly after Charlie Kirk's assassination that showed that, especially from ages 18 to 35, I want to say, left-wingers say at a level of 6 to 11 times more or something like that. You'll have to look at the poll yourself. I'll link it in the description as well, maybe put it on screen, but left-wingers, especially young people, at a much higher, an alarmingly higher rate as opposed to conservatives, say that political violence is acceptable and it's an acceptable means to push a political agenda. So this isn't just, hey, look at your eyes, listen, pay attention to what your eyes show you and your ears tell you. It's also statistically true. Regardless, the compilation was taken down on YouTube. I got a strike for it, I got a warning. And then the actual entire video with my commentary was taken down. So back-to-back strikes. I'm one strike away from losing my YouTube channel. So I appealed the first one, obviously. I appealed the compilation one, and I said, hey, this, because what they struck me down for was for inciting violence or something, which was insane because all of the clips that I used came from YouTube. All of the clips of violent rhetoric being used by Democratic leaders. So the multiple instances of Joe Biden demonizing MAGA, Hillary Clinton saying that they needed to be deprogrammed, that it was a cult, Maxine Waters saying that we need to go up to them in the polls and let them know that they're not welcome here. These clips, there's even one of a Democrat just straight up calling for Trump to be eliminated. So these clips are on YouTube. It's clear in the compilation that I'm not calling for violence. I'm not calling for an incitement of a blood feud where we just go, oh, we got to hit him back and do this forever. That's not at all what I asked for. Anybody who listened to that episode could see that my main message, my main takeaway was to go create something in response to this. Create a piece of art, writing, a podcast, a blog, a vlog, a newspaper clipping, an article online. Do something to make your voice heard. Go vote these Democratic leaders out. Vote the Republican leaders out if they're pushing for violence as well. Handle this legitimately. Handle this the way a good Christian would do it. That was my main takeaway. I never once, nothing in that commentary or in the compilation could be spun as me inciting violence. Of course not. That would make me a hypocrite. And I'm not a hypocrite. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a hypocrite. I hope. But regardless, what happens with these YouTube strikes is they get the algorithm automatically triggers something and then it gets reviewed by a person. I requested an appeal and they denied it. So my channel was frozen. I couldn't upload for, I want to say because it was 2 back-to-back strikes in a short period of time, I couldn't upload for like a month. So this really bothered me, and I appealed the other one, and I said, hey, what is going on here? This is ridiculous. These are clips that are here already on YouTube. I'm not inciting violence. They ended up granting the appeal for the compilation, I believe, but not for the commentary video. So I got the strike waived and I got the video taken back up. They said, my apologies. And I said, okay, great. Now can you retroactively fix that one? Because it's the same exact content. It's the compilation in both the compilation video and in the commentary video that got struck. And they kept saying no. So I've repeatedly gone back and forth with as many emails, with as many people as I can with customer support for YouTube. And I haven't gotten it back. But regardless, this just shows the bias that it still exists in these companies. I couldn't even make a good faith, well thought out, calm response where I encourage people to stay calm and to get off the internet and to spend time with family and friends, touch grass, pray, read, write, create. That's the kind of stuff that YouTube hates. So that's the monster that we're dealing with. The battle's not over. Just because these social media platforms have pledged money to the current administration and they've scaled back on a lot of censorship, it doesn't mean that it's completely perfect, and it never will be again. YouTube is it's like every other thing that I grew up with. It's worse than it was before, and it will never be as good as it was when I was a child or when I was younger. So anyway, end rant. If you want to support the show, continue to watch, continue to share, buy some merch. 100% of the proceeds go to the Child Mind Institute. Anyway, let's get into the episode. First topic, government shutdown. So, we are in about week 3. I want to say maybe week 3.5 of government shutdown. government shutdown was mainly over some simple, really simple fact. It's very, very simple. So, Republicans wanted to keep the budget from last year. Democrats wanted to increase it. Period. That is the straight up reason why we had a government shutdown. Now, when you zoom in, there are different things that the Democrats wanted to push to increase the budget for. And one of the most talked about and discussed aspects of this is taxpayer-funded healthcare for illegals, which is insane on so many different levels. Regardless, this government shutdown, I hope, here's what I hope happens from this. So the government's been shut down for 3 weeks, okay? For the most part, besides mission essential people, the government is shut down. Military are still working. They're not getting paid. Most, if not all, government employees are also not getting paid. They're furloughed, so they're either not showing up to work at all, or they're showing up to work and they're not getting paid. So hopefully what this shows, again, with just like with the initial Doge cuts, federal worker cuts, is that 3 weeks have passed. Hopefully it ends soon for the sake of those good government employees. And of course the military should never not get paid. That's one of the true travesties of a government shutdown. But what I hope this teaches people is that, look at this, government has been shut down for 3 weeks, and the United States has not fallen. The United States still has the same problems as before, but it hasn't really developed any new ones. So what I hope this shows people is that, hey, turns out we don't actually need this massive bureaucracy, this massive organization. It's the United States government is like the largest, most poorly regulated, if you can even say that it's regulated, corporation in the entire world that the world has ever seen. So Democrats wanted to increase the budget. One of the reasons they wanted to was to spend more taxpayer dollars on healthcare for illegals. So on one hand, they talk about how our healthcare system is on the brink of collapse. It's on the brink of collapse. Everybody's sick. No one can afford to go to the doctor. People are avoiding going to the doctor because they can't afford it. You know, the statistic of that goes up every single year. Each and every year it goes up 60%. I think at the end of last year, 60% of Americans could not afford a $1,000 emergency. So the solution from the Democrats is to just completely blow up the system. Is that the plan? Blow up the system by also forcing in potentially 10 plus million illegals so they can get free healthcare as well? Why can't the government shut down until we figure out how to fix the healthcare system for Americans first? And then we take the illegals that want free healthcare, we put them in a cannon, we launch them into the water. How about that? Why are we shutting down over budget issues in regards to illegals rather than Americans? We should shut the government down for Americans if we're going to shut down at all. If the parents, the Democrats and the Republicans, who are neglecting the kids, decide that they're going to ignore each other and not feed the kids and not put food on the table, do it over a good reason at least. Obviously, I'm kidding when it comes to the kid stuff. The entire point is that you have to make these things work. They're like our parents. Unfortunately, the three branches of government, they're like our parents. The executive and the legislative branch, they're like mom and dad, and the judicial branch is like the uncle that comes in and kind of steers the boat straight if they need extra support. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous that this is the reason that we have a shutdown. And the Republicans are no better. At least, though, the attempt, Congress can suck it. Like I've said many times before, there's only two congressmen that I trust, and they both happen to be out of Kentucky. And that's Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. But the Trump administration is attempting to continue to make more government employee cuts, shrinking the government. Because if you can reduce the budget all you want, but if you don't reduce the size of government, they're just going to find a way to increase that budget, sneak some more provisions in, sneak stuff like taxpayer-funded healthcare for Americans into these bills that are 14,000 pages long that nobody reads, and in the middle of it is extra funding for Sesame Street in Egypt or whatever. So the Republican congressmen and women are no better because they want the budget to increase as well, because that means more kickback, allegedly, to their constituents, to their donors. But the Trump administration is doing the right thing by trying to continue to shrink the size of the government. And it's so funny because the first day of the government shutdown, I work around and adjacent to a lot of military, a lot of U.S. military, and I had to go help a guy with something who had just showed up. He'd been in this little area, this warehouse for about a week. He was way too high of a rank to be doing this crap. He'd actually just been promoted to sergeant major, which I don't really understand the ranks, but in the army apparently that's a big deal. Anyway, this guy was tasked with cleaning out a warehouse, straightening out a warehouse because it was going to be turned into an important little hub. Okay, and the help that I had to provide was me and two other guys. So it was four of us that were sifting through, destroying, and organizing potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars of waste just alone in this one little yard. So there were, there were pieces for supply and logistics, equipment and materials that had been sitting out in the elements for who knows how long. They've been there for longer than I've been alive, probably. So you had pallets that have been sitting out that are warped, that are filled with water, that are rusted. Those things are not cheap. Those things cost tens of thousands of dollars to make. I remember looking it up there, and there was piles of them sitting out, rusting, filled with water, destroyed. They can't be fixed. They can't be salvaged. There's pallets of cots that soldiers who are deployed out in the wilderness or out in the elements are supposed to be able to use to sleep in, or they sleep in them in tents or whatever. Those things also were sitting out, completely destroyed. That's another tens of thousands of dollars. There's a chemical spill involving environmental hazardous materials to the environment, which is a no-go, period, but especially in Europe, it's a no-go. So that's another potential tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of trying to clean that out, finding the root of the issue, addressing it if it's gotten into water into streams or something. So the day that the government shutdown starts, I have to go help a guy in the military who's fed up with he got deployed out to a new area, and now he had to deal with these crumbling standards from this neglected warehouse where potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars were wasted. Completely wasted. Not salvageable by any means. And I remember this guy saying, "Man, I can't wait. I'm really excited. The SecDef speech really got me riled up. I'm looking forward to these standards being reintroduced because this has got to stop." And this has been the issue. I've worked around the military guys. I've seen a lot of leadership come in and out. But at the end of the day, the standards have continued to go down because the top-down leadership just doesn't have standards. They don't want to be the mean guy. They want to be nice. They don't want to hold people accountable. They want it to be very soft and accepting and this and this and that. We have to lower the standards for certain people. And that's going to go away. And that's, kind of part of this makeover that the Trump administration has been trying and successfully doing, at least this, 10 months into his administration. So the government shutdown is ridiculous. I hope that people who are affected by it have some means of support. I know the two banks that I use, the military banks, Navy Fed and USAA, are providing some type of relief. Some, I think, low or no interest loans to people who are affected by the shutdown. So I encourage everybody to look into and to take advantage of any services that you can, and stay strong. And hopefully we learn a lesson from this. And again, continue to send letters, continue to send emails to your senators, to your representatives. These people need to earn their terms. I want to say representatives, they serve a 2-year term. They're here for 2 years. We can vote them out easily. All we have to do is pay attention and get involved. Less than half of the eligible voting population in the United States actually votes. So if everybody voted, there's a high chance that this type of crap wouldn't happen. So stay active, use your voice, make your voice be heard. This is a very consequential time. So if you feel strongly about something, make your voice heard. We have the power of the internet, like I do. Make a podcast, write, make a blog, start a Substack, do something. But stay strong. The the night is dark just before the dawn. The next thing I wanted to talk about. So this is really funny. Well, it's not funny at all. This enrages me probably more than anything that happens in the United States. It's definitely in the top three. But so HHS employees, again, Health and Human Services. For those who don't know, RFK Jr. was picked to be nominated, and he was voted through to be the head of the HHS. They called for his ouster yet again. It reminds me of that BS letter that was signed and sent to Spotify during the pandemic, calling the 1,000 doctors and scientists, quote unquote, the biggest air quotes you've ever seen. The headline was 1,000 doctors and scientists sign an open letter to Spotify begging them to remove Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan was committing the horrible crime, the horrible atrocity of having on Robert Malone, the guy with the patents on the mRNA vaccine technology, Peter McCullough, cardiologist, most published cardiologist in the entire history of cardiology. Strange. What did they say? Oh, they said that, hey, we should probably not force this experimental vaccine that hasn't had blind placebo studies and trials. The side effects are being hidden. They're getting full 100% immunity by the United States government for anything that happens to the populations after they've been forced to be vaccinated by this. We should probably not do this. And then 1,000 quote-unquote doctors and scientists signed this letter. I ended up reading the names and the credentials of these people who signed this letter. There was like 10 doctors. The rest were just doctoral students. So a bunch of jackasses from Harvard who obviously are going to be pushed to push a standpoint, push a viewpoint, especially when it's a viewpoint that hurts the money that Harvard is getting to do these studies on snails or whatever the hell they're doing. Of course, Purdue Pharma is going to defend the pharmaceutical industry because that's where they get most of their funding. That's where most of these doctors get their grants to spend 10% of the money on the study and 90% on their kids and their grandkids' college funds and their new house and the renovations for their yacht and all that bullshit. So that's what that reminds me of, this HHS employee's call for RFK Jr.'s ouster. This does not work anymore. Nobody believes these lies. They tried during the pandemic to assert their control. They did for a couple years, and now nobody trusts them. And it's the greatest thing that could have happened to the American people and the worst thing that could have happened to Big Pharma. I'm seeing videos of doctors, and oh man, this gets me so heated. I have to turn down the heaters in my room because my skin and my head heats up this room better than a heater ever could. I'm seeing videos of these doctors who, one of the worst mistakes that we ever made as a country, as a society, was anointing nurses, CNAs, registered nurses, and doctors as, well, doctors are cool. Doctors are fine. 95% of doctors are great. But when we anointed nurses and CNAs as mission essential and as heroes during the pandemic, that was the worst thing we've ever done. That was worse than anything we've ever done as a country. It did so much damage, and it boosted the ego of these freaks so much. You know, my very first job, I worked alongside these people. They're disgusting. They're disgusting people. To become a CNA, you know what you have to do? You have to take a class for like a week, and then you get certified to be a CNA. So that means you get to wipe people's asses, you get to put needles in people's arms, you get to touch their medication, and you get to steal from them when they're not looking. That's what these people do. The first person that trained me, she was the roughest looking woman I'd ever seen in my life. She had done God knows how much drugs. Okay? She's going into strangers' houses. They're letting her in. She cooks eggs for them, and then she probably steals from them. That's who these people are. We anointed them as mission essential heroes during the pandemic, okay? And what did this do to them? That taught them to become the most demeaning, narcissistic assholes imaginable. So I'm seeing videos of nurses, so people who are assholes, people who couldn't become doctors because they're too retarded to become a doctor, okay? So they go to learn how to wipe an elderly person's ass, and the best way to steal a special clock that has meaning to this elderly person, okay? That's who these people are. These people are making videos now, and I'm seeing some doctors make videos where they are so pissed off because new parents are coming to them and they're asking them, hey, can you explain to me the side effects of this vaccine that you're telling me that I should get my kid, or this medicine that you say that I should have for my child. And the doctors are pissed off. I saw a video of a doctor saying, basically, he was pissed off because he was like, they're not blindly accepting what I've told them now. They're not blindly accepting the stuff that I'm getting cash put in my back pocket to prescribe people. I don't even know what's in this stuff. I don't want to know. I went to school for 10 years so I could be an expert on one specific lane of health. I give all respect to doctors. Doctors are great. I've never had a bad experience with a doctor. But these people should be questioned. That's their entire job. If you are a cardiologist, then you should be able to tell me exactly what effect on my heart this vaccine or this pill or this surgery will have. If you don't, then why are you here? Why are you getting paid so much money to not even be able to answer a question the one time a week that somebody asks you, the one time a week someone asks you to do your job, the one time you should be happy that this, and I'm going to be completely fair too. I've also seen videos of doctors saying they couldn't be happier that people are informed. They couldn't be more happy when a parent or two parents come up to them and they ask them, hey doc, I'd like to know, can you explain to me how the process works? What is this going to have an effect? What's the risk? What's the benefit? Just do an analysis with me. A lot of doctors are very, very happy to do that. And they're really happy that people are more conscious of what they're putting in their bodies and their kids' bodies. So I'm not going to say that's all of them, but it just makes me laugh that these are the same people who are calling for RFK Jr.'s ouster, claiming things like American trust in health professionals is at an all-time low because of RFK Jr. No, it's at an all-time low because of your actions. RFK Jr. is just calling you out, and he's addressing it. He's not anti-vax. I've already said it 1,000 times. I'm not going to say it again, but anyway, RFK Jr. has been doing a great job cleaning up perhaps the most corrupted part of the United States. I would honestly say that between Big Pharma and the military-industrial complex, these are the most corrupt parts of the United States. And Trump did a great job bringing in two guys that they're not putting up with this crap. They've been there. They've done that. RFK Jr. and Sec War, Pete Hegseth. By the way, if you guys haven't seen the speech that Pete Hegseth gave, I want to say the night before the government shutdown began, I highly recommend you guys watch it. I'm not going to join the military, but if I was, it's because of that video. It's because of that speech. But there's also been a few studies that have come out that RFK Jr. has addressed that show that indiscriminate use of products with acetaminophen, so things like Tylenol, while pregnant can increase the chance of autism, per Johnson & Johnson's pharma branch, Janssen. This is not your uncle that's saying this. This is the pharmaceutical branch of research for Johnson & Johnson, which is called Janssen. They did a study, and they were receiving so many inquiries about this stuff, and there were some emails that were leaked between some high up people this high corporate people in Janssen that were saying, hey, we keep getting emails about this stuff. I looked at one study and I don't see a link. I don't see any causation. There's correlation but no causation. And you have some really mentally ill, sick people that are taking fistfuls of Tylenol on video, uploading it to the internet because they think that's going to own RFK Jr. and Trump. Because at the end of the day, we all know, just look at Hollywood, look at leftists who have mentally ill kids with neurological disorders like autism spectrum disorder. They love it. It's like a feather in their cap. They use them, they weaponize these poor kids and their mental illnesses and their neurological disorders, and they use it as like, oh look, I have a trans kid. Megan Fox is like, oh yeah, I have 3 trans kids. They use their kids to get some social credit score. It's evil. It's like biblical proportions of evil. But the most important thing is you have parents with autistic kids who fully support RFK Jr.'s investigative work, and childless or piece of shit parents who are shaming and using manipulative tactics to discredit them. They're completely dismissed. I saw a video of a doctor who was like, RFK Jr. and Trump need to watch their rhetoric because autism is not a curse. It's not horrible. And they should watch how we talk about these kids. And the comments were filled with parents that are like, I have 3 autistic kids. I love them to death, but they're never going to live on their own. They're never going to have jobs. They're never going to be fully independent. And if I can help and support someone to try to prevent this or address this for future parents, I fully support it. So you have thousands, if not tens of thousands of families with autistic kids that fully support RFK Jr. That's probably why he does it. You think he just chose autism, put him in the crosshairs and said, I'm going to address autism because I feel like it? No, it's probably because thousands of parents and families talk to him about it. And that's what motivates him, and I fully support him. I fully support him. So these doctors that write emotionally appealing garbage like, it's not a crisis, words matter, it hurts their feelings, you should still love your kid. Yeah, no shit. Nobody ever said not to love your autistic kid, except maybe the leftists who are downing Tylenol to own Trump. Because, having a special kid gives them a trophy to score points with. It's statistically impossible, by the way, to have that many trans kids. Anyway, it is statistically probable to be an abusive Hollywood actor, though. That's for sure. It's statistically probable to be a Hollywood actor and to abuse your kids. Parents with autistic kids struggle like you wouldn't believe, and so many of them support RFK Jr. because they love their child. But it's painful. It's painful for them, and they hope for a day where there's less families negatively affected by autism, because it's called autism spectrum disorder for a reason. Some families, some people have it much worse than others. There are people that have, low levels of autism where they just don't really understand social cues, and some cannot function. They forget to breathe when there's too many noises, or they cry when, a shirt doesn't fit right on them. There's a spectrum, and we should fully support RFK Jr. for isolating and figuring out what parts of what are environmental factors and what are lifestyle choices and products and food and drink that we're putting into ourselves and our kids. The next bit I wanted to talk about. So I've talked about it a lot bit before, but I'll kind of give a brief summary again. So in Germany, there are multiple political parties. They have the the coalition style elections in the United Germany. Yeah, in Germany. So the 2 main parties that won the election last time was supposedly the Democratic Christian Party, and then there was another social democratic party that kind of joined together. They coalesced and then they got elected. Since then, we've had a special election where Olaf Scholz, who was the former chancellor of Germany, he was ousted because of how bad of a job he's done. His coalition government was falling apart, and now we have a new chancellor of Germany called Merz or Marx. I don't know, and I don't care, but there's a populist kind of right-wing party called the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, that has started to gain popularity, at least probably since the Cologne incident, where there was 1,000 women who were raped one night in Cologne by a specific make and model of car from a certain region of the world, kind of Middle East part of the world. 7 candidates from this party have died within a short period of time, which is just a coincidence. One of them died by suicide and the others from health conditions, which is completely unbelievable because these people are not old. The AfD is a group of young, patriotic Germans, and they have the controversial stance of curbing immigration, boosting the German economy, helping out German citizens and focusing on them before they help others, maybe increasing their military might, because the German military is so pathetic and small. It's never going to be a world superpower as far as militarily. Economically, yes. Militarily, Germany will never be a threat to anybody ever, except maybe France, and that's because everybody's a threat to France. If you have any testosterone, you're a threat to France. But the European Union, the World Economic Forum, the powers that be, they know that a party like the AfD would be transformative for Germany in a positive way. It'd be transformative for Europe in a positive way. Because Germany is like the United States for Europe. Everything that Germany does, the rest of the European Union ends up following because they are like the biggest contributor to the European Union. They contribute so much aid economically to the rest of the European Union that whatever happens to them usually happens to the rest of the world. So, for example, Russia-Ukraine war starts. We start sanctioning Russia and Russian oil. German economy tanks. Energy prices increase. Economic hardship for Germany. And then it follows for the rest of the European Union. Germany, the AfD, has started to gain in popularity. The populist movement that wants to focus on Germany for Germans, France for French, Britain for British first, and then we can help people. And the rest of the European Union has followed. There have been populist movements surging across Europe. You have a populist movement in France that's constantly kicking up dust. You had a candidate that should have been elected as Prime Minister of France, but they found some bogus charges to trump up on her. Her name is Marine Le Pen. You have Italy, Giorgia Meloni. She was elected. She's a more conservative populist candidate. She's been doing a lot of things to preserve Italian culture, helping out Italians first and foremost. So the European Union is falling apart. It will fall apart one day, which will be good for the citizens, but I'm not sure how good that will be for something else will replace it. Some kind of trade agreement, some kind of trade sanctioned body will replace it, which I'm fine with. There should be, ease of freedom of movement, ease of travel between European countries. But the European Union in its current state is not tenable. It's not going to exist forever. It's falling apart. You can't have unelected bureaucrats speaking on behalf of the European Union and the individual nations that make up the European Union. So the European Union, the cracks are showing. The people have spoken. They're going to continue to become more populist as time goes on. 7 AfD candidates getting killed is not a coincidence. I'm not saying I know what happened, but I'm saying this is not a coincidence. 7 members of a political party dying within such a short period of time is very, very suspicious. But it's only going to invigorate, and it has only continued to invigorate the population of Germany. AfD will one day get into power, and it's going to be a great day for Germany. Not so great a day for the bureaucrats that control the European Union, though. The next thing I wanted to talk about. So, James Comey, former director of the FBI, he is about to learn what karma is and what justice is. So when James Comey was the FBI director, he oversaw and he directly ordered the silencing, raiding, arresting, and intimidation of tons of innocent people for the Russiagate hoax. Russia interfered with the election, as it does with every single election. Every single nation interferes with every other nation's elections, but it didn't elect Donald Trump. Russia did not elect Donald Trump. The people of the United States elected Donald Trump. Then they did it again after he was indicted on 90,000 fake charges. Russia did not elect Donald Trump. Trump was elected as a Hail Mary by Americans, obviously. They were sick of empty suit, smooth-talking politicians that were the same, whether they had a D or R next to their name. Hillary Clinton and Obama, they were directly involved with Russiagate. Directly. There was an investigation that showed that there was not a credible link between Donald Trump and Russia besides business. So Hillary and Obama funded the Steele dossier, which was used as operation research, quote unquote, which made it legal. That's the legal workaround for a Watergate-level scandal. Opposition research is allowed if it can't be proven that you're doing research to further something that you know is a lie. But everyone knew this was a lie. Everyone with open eyes and an intact brain knows that Trump is not a Russian asset. What kind of Russian asset would continuously arm Ukraine to kill Russians and hurt Russia? That's just one example, one small example. But James Comey was recently charged with a few crimes, and then for some reason, even though he put a gag order on everybody else that was involved in the Russiagate hoax, he didn't have a gag order put on him. I don't know what the current FBI director is doing. Not anything good, apparently, but Kash Patel should have put a gag order on him because James Comey made a stupid video where he's pretending like he's standing up to the powers that be when the reins of justice are being used legitimately to address corruption, unlike what James Comey and the Biden administration did when they were in power. So James Comey is about to find out what happens when justice is used legitimately. He's a horrible person. He did permanent damage on the psyche of the American people, permanent damage on the trust in the justice system. He's a scumbag, and he deserves to go to prison. I'm looking forward to when he goes to prison as well. But he made a video where he's pretending to get on his high horse about how he knew the risk of fighting against people like Donald Trump, him and his family. So he's inciting violence again with his rhetoric by making it sound like this is the empire and you are the Jedi, you are the rebels. You have to, I'm not going to say it explicitly, but I'm going to take the mentally ill people who like me and I'm going to say things that make it sound like they should probably maybe make something that should be skewed as a calling for a mentally ill person to go do something violent. And we're seeing it happen all over the place. You have Democratic leaders who are inciting violence against ICE agents. They're trying to uncover these ICE agents' faces because they know that these people will be doxxed, their families will be harassed, their families will be assaulted, they'll have violence perpetrated on them. And it's ridiculous because I voted for this 100%. Most people voted for this 100%. I 100% voted for legitimization of the justice system. I voted for the deportation of illegals. And guess what? I don't care about people getting pepper sprayed. I don't care about people getting arrested after they've thrown rocks at ICE agents, thrown rocks at National Guard members, thrown rocks at the military, spit on them, blocked traffic, thrown rocks at their vehicles, thrown Molotov cocktails at their vehicles, threatened violence against them. Not only is that illegal, it's disgusting, it's immoral, it's evil. And guess what? Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck and killed in front of his family, thousands of live in-person attendance, and millions of viewers. That's the new standard. So if you're not getting shot in the neck and killed in front of your family, thousands of in-person attendance, millions of viewers, I don't care. I don't care what happens to you. After you've attempted to assault a federal agent, you get pepper sprayed. That's what you get. That's what you get. You're lucky that you live in the United States. You're lucky that the worst thing that happens to you is you get arrested for a couple hours. This is exactly what I voted for. The next thing I wanted to talk about. So the Israel-Hamas war is over for now. Trump and his team, along with some Middle Eastern allies, including Qatar, they were involved in, since this war started really, they were trying their best to end it, but we finally have an end to it. Palestinian hostages were released and sent home to whatever home they could salvage from the rubble. The remaining Israeli hostages, I believe, were returned home. And I don't care if this isn't a long-term peace deal. There will never be long-term peace in this region, probably because of the passionate and dedicated religious significance of this area. Also, if there ever is long-lasting peace, it's not going to be facilitated by the United States. It's going to have to involve Israelis and Palestinians and the surrounding Arab nations that have problems with Israel and the ones that get along with them and recognize them, like the few that signed the Abraham Accords. Hamas also started executing Palestinians in Gaza because they're terrorists. They're not good people. They're not resistance. They're not rebels. They're terrorists. They're evil people who used Palestinians, not just since October 7th, 2023, but they've used them for years as human shields. They purposefully burrow themselves beneath hospitals and schools. And now that they are not shooting at Israel and the IDF and Jews, they're now shooting at Gazans again. They've always been horrible people. They've always used Gaza and Palestinians as bulletproof shields, as fodder to push their agenda. And it's unfortunate because Palestinians have suffered enough. They're going to continue to suffer as long as Hamas exists. What's the solution to this? I don't know. I don't know why more of the neighboring Arab nations don't get involved in these types of disputes. Maybe it's because they understand that there's nothing they can do. There's the famous video of, I think it's some prominent member of the royal family in Saudi Arabia saying, if you are a Western person and you claim to know more about Islam than we, than we do, the people that are neighbors with these people, the people who practice their religion, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Keep your mouth shut, because this is an issue that is way bigger than you guys could ever understand. I'm kind of butchering the quote, but you could definitely find it. Free Palestine people, it's kind of weird, the Free Palestine crowd, they're not celebrating the end of the war because maybe it wasn't actually about ending the war. Maybe it was just about them. Somehow, these Free Palestine weirdos made every single thing about the genocide. They used the G word, which is a sensitive word because it's, we've seen many actual genocides in our lifetime. We've seen the Kurds getting genocided. In the 90s, we saw the people of Kosovo getting genocided by the Serbs. You've had Bosnians getting genocided by Turkey. Turkey has genocided more people than anybody's business. And nobody has said anything about them. Nobody holds them accountable. They get away with everything. They've genocided so many groups and nobody seems to hold them accountable for some reason. It's almost as if we don't care about people and we just have to make every single conflict about ourselves. I'm referring to the Palestinian Free Palestine idiots. There was actually a meme since October 7th where no matter what was happening in the world, one of the Free Palestine weirdos had to be like, yeah, it's sad that Charlie Kirk died, but what about the genocide? What about the genocide? Yes, we can't care about any issue when there's an act of genocide going on that's not a genocide. Even the United Nations has not called it a genocide because it isn't a genocide. But anyway, these Free Palestine freaks, they now have to find something else to sit on their high horse over, which I think they've now all flipped to the ICE raids, to the people getting deported or getting sent to the detention centers to get processed and then get deported. There was also that guy who was from Trinidad and Tobago that was killed in one of the Venezuelan drug boat boom booms that the United States military did. I also fully support this. I have friends and people that I know that I went to high school with who didn't even make it to 10 years past the graduation to get to overdose from fentanyl. Fentanyl that's coming from China, coming from South America. You have a lot of opiates that are coming through South America on these Venezuelan drug boats. I support them getting blown up. There was a Trinidad and Tobago man that people were trying to say. It's so funny when they do this. They'll be like, this guy was a father, a brother, a husband. Here's a picture of him that's blurry and old from 2005 because in 2006 he was arrested. He had gang tattoos. He joined a gang. He was trafficking weapons, women, children, and drugs. So we have to show this old picture of him. Help. Help. Feel bad for us. Yeah, this guy was a gang member. This specific man. I knew he was too as soon as I saw the old picture because it's like that guy. It's like Abrego Garcia or whatever that like he sounds like he has a name from a horde villain of World of Warcraft. But the wife was doing the videos where she was clearly coached. She barely speaks English. She's clearly coached by the Democratic Party to talk about my husband is a good man and he needs to return home. And then she posts pictures of him and he has filters for some reason. She put hearts over his hands because he has MS-13 tattoos. Get this guy out of my country. Get him out. Get him out. Blow up these drug ships. Blow up these drug boats. I don't think I support us doing any military or CIA intelligence actions in Venezuela, but here's the thing. Here's the secret, all right? Come in close, huddle up. They're doing it anyway, whether you like it or not. We're doing military operations in other countries anyway. So I'm not saying it's a good thing that we're doing, I didn't vote for military action in Venezuela, but I did vote for the crippling of cartels, the curbing of illegal drug traffic, human trafficking, weapon trafficking that goes through the United States from South and Central America. While I don't explicitly support it, it is happening. It could have a good effect, or it could have a bad effect, and you're going to have to wait and see. But I do like seeing drug traffickers get blown up. I do like seeing ICE raids into cities like Los Angeles where there's clear money laundering that's going on. That's what kicked off this first wave of ICE raids in LA, was there was a massive money laundering operation for the Mexican cartel that was being funneled through quote-unquote legitimate businesses in LA. That's what the raids started as. That's what they've mainly been. They started with deporting criminals, then they started deporting other illegals that have been here, and then they started to go after, once they investigated and found money laundering operations. So it's no wonder that Democratic cities, Democratic leaders like Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, people like this, there's no wonder why the mayor of Chicago is pissed off at these raids. It's because he knows that there's unaddressed money laundering, cartel operations being ran out of these cities. And nothing makes me happier than seeing these guys getting exposed and getting crippled, getting their drug empires crippled, because this has gone on for far too long. Talk to anybody who lives near a major city, and they've seen, or they've unwillingly been a part of, or they've heard stories about this kind of stuff. It's finally being addressed. And again, this is exactly what I voted for. I voted exactly for the deportation of illegals. I voted exactly for the crippling of drug empires. I voted exactly for the exposing and the destruction of money laundering operations that are occurring from inside of and through major cities in the United States of America. These people don't belong in this country. They should be crippled. Their power should be taken. They should be stripped of their titles and the grip they have over our population and their population. This is exactly what I voted for. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the latest updates in the Russia-Ukraine war. So I was a little concerned for a second because a few weeks ago, Trump made a complete 180 on this war, and he all of a sudden started saying things like, Ukraine can actually not only win back all of its territory that it lost since the start of this war, it can even take some more, meaning it can go into Russia and take some Russian territory, which is such an insane thing to say. It's completely not non-factual. It's completely impossible. That would never happen. That would never, ever, ever happen. Then he also started to talk about, hey, I've been talking with Zelensky. We're going to send him Tomahawk missiles so they can strike within Russia. That is, first of all, strategically is really strange. You can't, it's kind of dumb to go on an offensive when you've been fighting a defensive war, you've lost territory, and you've made next to zero progress on counteroffensives. But not only was that just strategically stupid, but also Russia immediately said, if Ukraine starts using U.S. Tomahawk missiles to strike within Russia, that's a direct involvement by the United States. We're at war with the United States, okay? Nobody wants that. Well, Lindsey Graham and his people with his nuclear bunkers that they think will keep them safe, these childless goblins like Lindsey Graham, they want war because they have a lot of stock, allegedly, in companies like Amentum and Halliburton and Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. So it was really strange and quite concerning that he made that complete 180. Luckily, we didn't actually start sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm not in the military, and I'm not really involved in that kind of stuff, so I wouldn't know. But it's unfortunate because Trump genuinely cares and wants to end this war, but he just became president at the worst possible time. Putin and Russia, right now, have no incentive to end the war because they're winning. Winners don't want to go to the negotiating table most of the time. They do out of like the goodness of their heart, or if they find it kind of amusing. Ukraine soon will have no men to fight for the military. Not only will they not have men to fight, but when this war ends, they're not going to have any men to repopulate Ukraine, and Ukraine's just going to get flooded with, who knows, Russians, Polish, Romanians. Ukraine is going to be permanently changed from this war, and it's really heartbreaking. It's really sad because the Ukrainian people have a rich history. There's a lot of history there. Kiev is a very historic city for Eastern Europe, for the Ukrainian and the Russian people. It's a very historical Slavic city, and it's really unfortunate that this has to happen to him. So I don't give Vladimir Putin a pass. I'm just saying, looking at this logically, logistically, Russia and Putin have no incentive to end the war. Regardless, Trump is going to meet with Putin, I believe, in Budapest or Bucharest soon. Those are two very different cities, but regardless, he had a very productive talk with him and Zelensky again on the phone, and he's going to be meeting with Putin again. So let's end this shit already. Let's end this shit. Let's have Trump have ended 9 wars in less than a year of becoming president. This will be really the feather in the cap of Trump's legacy as far as foreign policy goes, especially because his first presidency, many looked at and have said historians included, have said the worst aspect of his first administration was his foreign policy. He did such a bad job on foreign policy. I wasn't really as active during his first presidency. The podcast really got into full swing in 2020, 2021. So I focused more on domestic issues rather than foreign policy issues. But I've been really happy with how he's handled really everything foreign policy wise. Besides, like I said, the unsanctioned operations in Venezuela. That's probably no good. I didn't vote for that, but what I did vote for was bringing back manufacturing to the United States, addressing the crippling debt that we have, addressing the multiple wars that we were involved in before that he got into his presidency to end. So I'm happy with this because if you think about it, if Ukraine is no longer at war with Russia, if Israel is no longer at war with Hamas, that means that there's less need for us to send aid to them because we're not going to cut off all foreign aid. That's never going to happen. That probably shouldn't happen. But there should be a reduction in it, especially while the United States is falling apart. While nobody is going to the doctor because they can't afford it. Nobody can afford a $1,000 emergency. These types of things need to be addressed first before we start, rebuilding Ukraine, putting an iron dome around other countries before we put one around our own. Things like that. But this is good news. Diplomacy is always good. You should always be talking actively. You can't come to peace terms if you're not talking. So it is just a good sign, period, that they're talking. So let's hope and pray for a permanent end to this war. That's going to do it for this episode of Xendependently Minded. Hope you guys enjoyed it. One more thing I wanted to mention was Chuck Schumer again last week. It was caught on video, proudly inciting violence. He called for what did he call it? I don't remember what he called for, but I posted it on my podcast page. But he called for something like a violent awakening or something like that in response to Letitia James getting charged with actual real estate fraud. She's actually getting the reins of justice used on her legitimately, rather than the fake charges that they trumped up against Trump, ironically. And also he said this in response to the government shutdown, because him and Cory Booker, I think, have been the main two guys that have said, we're not budging on this. We're not going to budge on this government shutdown. We have to have taxpayer-funded healthcare for illegals, which will not actually be used as funded healthcare for illegals. It's going to be a way to continue to probably money launder for the cartels. He knows because he's been in power forever. Chuck Schumer, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? I got to insert that clip in here. But anyway, I just wanted to share that yet again, Chuck Schumer, with no consequences, has continued to incite violence. I don't want violence to be committed upon him. I just want him to watch his rhetoric, because his rhetoric directly led to Steve Scalise being shot, directly led to an attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh, 2 Supreme Court justices, the law of the land. 2 justices of the law of the land were put at risk directly because of rhetoric from people like Chuck Schumer. So, again, vote this guy out. Vote this guy out. Protest him peacefully. No matter where he goes, protest peacefully. Because this guy is an evil, Batman-like villain. He's evil. And his violent rhetoric should not be tolerated. It should be met with peaceful rhetoric, legitimate protest, legitimate resistance. Because there is no place like this in the United States. We are not a banana republic, or we shouldn't be at least. We are not a country that assassinates political dissidents, political opponents. That's not the kind of country that I grew up in. That's not the kind of country that I want to be a part of. And we're not going to be like this. We're not. The future is bright. I'm taking the white pill, and I'm taking 2 doses of the white pill today. The future is bright. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Independently Minded. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you took something away. Hope you find some comfort, some solace, some comedy, or maybe you just listen to it and you go, man, this guy's the stupidest person I've ever heard. Regardless, I appreciate the support. Check out this episode on any of the podcast platforms you listen to. Well, I mean, if you're listening to it, you already know where to find it, but share it with anybody you think might find interest or might take something away from it. I'm always looking for guests to talk to. The only prerequisite is that you have stable internet and that you have just something to talk about. It doesn't have to be politics. Tell me about your profession. If you're a bricklayer, tell me about that. If you're a construction guy or gal, let me know about that. If you're a doctor, veterinarian, if you're a nurse, get away from me. Just kidding. In all seriousness, I'm always looking to talk to people and learn from them. So anyway, I hope you guys stay safe. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll catch you on the next one. Oh, before I forget, my recommendation this week is the final album from Mobb Deep. I want to say it's called Infinite. So this is a posthumous album. Well, at least because one of the two members of Mobb Deep died in 2017 from his sickle cell condition. Ironically, Tupac talked about, he warned about this in his diss Hit 'Em Up when he was talking crap about the guy with sickle cell. But the album is great. This year's really been a nice year for old head rappers like myself. I like some new stuff, but I miss a lot of stuff from the 90s and 2000s, and this is just beautiful stuff. Specifically, there's a song called Pour the Henny on this new album that Nas is in, and man, his bars are as... Nas is the GOAT. He really is. Nas is the greatest of all time. But anyway, check out Mobb Deep's new album, Infinite, especially if you're an old head fan of old rap. Catch you guys on the next episode. As always, stay safe, stay away from those crazies out there. Thank you.